Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast hosted by Concept 3D. If you like our content, please follow and subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you listen to us. And if you're listening on Apple specifically, please drop us a comment. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. My name is Shiro Otori, and I will be your host today. And I'm really looking forward to talking about FAFSA frustrations and the responses for it, as well as building a sense of belonging for students. And for the conversation, I'm very excited to have Kate Coffman join us today. She is the Associate Vice President for University Marketing and Enrollment Strategy at the University of Indianapolis. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thanks, Shira. I'm so excited to be here.
It's great to have you. And I do ask all my guests this question. Please tell me what you love about higher ed.
For me, it's the people. And I fell in love with higher ed as a student and knew immediately I was going to change my major and go to grad school in it, and then have worked in it for 25 years. So I love the students. I love my colleagues. And I think it just takes a really unique person to work in higher ed, and I enjoy spending my time with them.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. And, can you tell us a little bit more about what you are doing at your role right now?
Sure. So I am responsible for basically building the funnel as it relates to enrollment. So outreach to prospective students, freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and then kind of converting those to applicants and eventually deposits. And then in addition to that, I oversee the team that handles all university marketing. So everything from kind of brand awareness, advancement, alumni work, to even just campus events that are happening.
Oh, wow. Okay. How big is your team, by the way? That's a different hats.
So the marketing and communications team is about 11 people. I don't oversee the day-to-day admissions operations, so counselors and all of that don't report to me.
Okay. Got it. Thank you so much. So, a little bit about enrollment in the current climate, right? There's a lot of discussions and frustrations going around with the FAFSA delays. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on and how you're adjusting and what you're hearing back from your students or staff or faculty?
Sure. So for us in Indiana, we would normally be doing packaging probably around December. Our state has very generous state financial aid. So once they kind of release information to us, we can start packaging. So we're definitely several months behind where we would normally be. And I think it's impacting deposits because students just don't know yet. Higher ed is such an investment, and we want to make sure it's a manageable investment. And so if they don't have the information to make that decision, then they shouldn't, because we also don't want a bunch of melt. So for those of us who are not higher ed experts, melt is when someone pays a deposit and then withdraws that deposit and decides to go elsewhere or not go to school. So for us, we're trying to find ways to kind of help connect with families and help them make their decision about the institution. So continuing with admitted student days and pushing visits so that once that financial information is available, they're kind of ready to commit. Here in Indiana, we have half the number of FAFSAs filed that we did this time last year, which is really concerning because we actually have a new state law that our high school seniors have to file a FAFSA or a waiver. So the fact that we're seeing numbers so far behind really worries me about students being able to meet that high school graduation requirement, but also get the information they need to make college affordable. And our college going numbers have been down since the pandemic. So it's really critical. Well, not all of our students come from Indiana. I really do want to see our state succeed. So we really want to get those students filing their FAFSAs.
Yeah, that makes sense. I read an article from University Business that I believe as a whole, it's like 58% less FAFSA as were submitted. But I know there's going to be probably some catch up as more people are, because the deadline has been extended at least till March for now. This is recorded on February 21st. And so I'm hoping, there's going to be some catch up on that 58%. But yeah, definitely hearing that. What does it mean? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
As I say, I'm actually a parent of a college student, and it was actually easier to file the FAFSA. Like once I got it to work, it took a while to get in and the platform to be stable. But I think once the government works out these bugs, it's actually going to be a better tool for families.
Right.
But so many people are just struggling with the fact that they didn't answer something correctly, so they couldn't put in the parent income, or there's just
Hmm.
errors that are causing like no student aid index to be calculated. The student aid index is replacing what was formerly the estimated family contribution. So I think there's just a ton of people in limbo too, that their form is just incorrect and they can't fix it.
Got it. Well, that's good to hear. As a parent, that the filing process was easier, because I think ultimately that's what they were trying to achieve.
Yes.
Minus the delays that have
And the
happened.
technical tsunami
Yeah.
that's happening.
Yeah. Hopefully next year they have, all the, or next year, 2 years from now, they have all the bugs figured out, but that's good. As a marketing professional and leader who supports and works closely and hand in hand with the enrollment team, like what sorts of things are you doing to help communicate all these adjustments and, these timelines that keep changing and information that keeps changing?
So we've tried to communicate to both our internal and our external audiences to make sure, because this impacts current students as well as prospective students. So we've done some campus messages to faculty, staff, and students about the delays, what they should expect when packages will come out. And then we've been doing email communication to parents and students about the delays. And we're even in the process of filming a video of like, once your package is ready, here's what you should be looking for. So that'll be coming out shortly to our prospective students. But just trying to help them navigate the process, know that they can call us for help. We also have a pretty robust College Goal Sunday program in our state still, which it was last weekend, but it's actually the 25th. It's this weekend. It's 40 spots around the state where students can get help from financial aid professionals filling out their FAFSA. So we've been trying to drive people to that event as well to get help.
Gotcha. And is there anything you're doing in terms of like surveying students, prospective or current, or families around like, where they're struggling or having issues with it all?
We haven't, no. Mostly, I mean, we're a small enough school that typically they call, and our financial aid team will just kind of walk them through and help whatever they're struggling with.
That's great. So it sounds like just increased communication,
Yeah,
empathy.
communications key through all of this. I did see the federal government released an email now to anyone who had filed with sort of next steps, which seemed to be a new thing the federal government had done. That came out just recently.
That's awesome. Okay. Are you shifting any events on campus going on? Are you increasing events? Are you adjusting anything going on campus due to this?
Yeah, we are. We're really focused on our orientation events. Because students might be deciding later than typical,
Mm-hmm.
we have added some orientation dates later in the summer, and we're going to release those as needed, kind of based on when we can start packaging and kind of how that impacts the deposit deadline. We also were one of the first schools in the state to move our deposit deadline. We moved it to June 1st, just to give families more time, depending on when we'll finally be able to get financial aid packages out. We're hearing late March, early April, but it's just such a moving target that we want to be cognizant of giving families the resources and the time they need. And then our admitted student day, we did not move that, but we're trying to make our Saturdays and things more available for more visits as people kind of get their financial aid packages.
Gotcha. And this is for in-campus, in-person visits?
In-person visits, yeah. We still do some virtual visits. And last night we had our first virtual event on another platform I can talk about in a minute, but that went really well. So we're trying to do some things like that to help engage students.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, let's jump in. What's this virtual event that you just launched?
So we use the platform Zeme, which is we joined to really build belonging among our prospective students. So it's kind of like a Slack or an online platform for students to connect. And so last night we had a trivia night. We had 90 students attend, which for our first event was really great. And we did University of Indianapolis and then Indianapolis, the city trivia, and they could win prizes. But it's really a chance for the students just to start to get to know each other and get to know our current students. For us, it's really important that we want students to develop a sense of belonging during the admission process. And I think belonging is kind of a new buzzword, but an old concept. Like we used to always talk about finding your fit or finding your community. Well, belonging is the same thing. But, how do we help students realize this is the right place for them, that there's going to be people here to support them, that they're going to feel part of the community? And if we can make those connections during the admissions process that are authentic, and that are going to continue once they're really here, I think it helps make that transition, For many of the students right now, they went virtual when they were in like middle school. Their first year of high school might have been online hybrid. So they got really accustomed to the virtual world, but they also have indicated that they really want in-person things, that it's important to them to be able to sort of make that choice. They don't want to be forced one way or the other. So having virtual events gives them that opportunity, but also they know that these are people then they can meet in person. So I've seen things like they'll ask each other who's going to admitted student day. And then last year after admitted student day, they were all kind of staying connected virtually, but they had met in person. And so it was cool to see these virtual friendships get enhanced by an in-person event and then continue virtually. And then when they were here welcome week, they already had this kind of like group that they knew and could hang out with and had similar interests. So and you don't necessarily have to use a platform like Zeme. I mean, Instagram works. They're not on Facebook, so Facebook's not going to work. But finding ways like where they are that you can help them plug in. So that's where we're spending a lot of our time and really trying to use our current students and other students just to influence each other in a really natural, organic way. Like we're not forcing it there because if we force it, it won't be real and they won't be happy here and they won't retain. So we're trying to help them find their people and hopefully, it's a good fit.
That's awesome. It sounds like events and maybe increased events and type of events is one of your strategies you're using in order to build that sense of belonging.
And it's funny because we reduced our number of in-person events because we wanted to have more people at them. Like we felt it was better to have kind of a stronger presence than a lot of options, because when you have a lot of events with smaller attendance, they're not necessarily getting that enthusiasm. So I think overall we actually have less in-person events, but we're increasing our virtual.
That's awesome. That's great. Are there any other types of, maybe you just started this up, types of events that you said trivia that you've seen that gets a lot of good engagement with students?
Our admitted student day, we try to incorporate academic things and the things they want to know in the tour, but we also try to just give them a lot of time to connect with each other and do some silly things. So this year we have a live mascot, Grady. And so this year our theme is kind of a takeoff of Taylor Swift's Era tour, but it's about Grady. And so they're going to do silly things like make friendship bracelets and, some things that'll be more interesting to males, but it's a chance for them just to connect with each other and spend some time, not formally in programming, so that they can see, like, are these people I want to spend the next 4 years of my life with? And we find that that's, while they want to know about their major and they want, to know about financial aid and their parents have specific questions, those chance to connect with each other really helps sell the institution.
I know in our previous conversation, in our intro call, we talked about, what's really working today at your university. And one interesting thing I learned was you don't always have to recreate the wheel. And I know that you actually looked at past branding routes and campaigns you've ran at the university and how you've implemented that same messaging to target your ideal students. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we held some focus groups last year after I took this role. I moved from a different role at the university into the AVP of marketing. And when we were talking to students, they started talking about how important the relationships they had on our campus were. And, oftentimes when we try to sell a small school, we focus on small classes or things that just don't really resonate with the students. And hearing these really powerful stories of faculty who connected them to an alumni who got them an internship, or having a conversation with a faculty member and they recommended a specific class and that led to a major change, really resonated with me. And one of my staff members who'd been here a while was like, we actually used to focus on that. We had this thing we called molecules, where we kind of had like a drawing of an atom with a student in the center and like who they were all connected to. And so we decided we didn't want to go back to that look necessarily, like that felt a little dated, but the concept of sort of people and connecting them. And we saw this almost like army behind the student, helping them be successful here. And so we're really trying to focus on who are the relationships here on campus, what differentiates us because of those relationships, what are the outcomes that result because of those relationships, and helping families going through the prospective student process see the benefit of a small school, which, we're a mid-sized university, but I think we function, especially at the undergrad level, like a small school. What are the benefits of that? Because our big competitors are our state schools, right? Like Indiana has incredibly affordable state schools. So, but you're going to be in a freshman math class with 300 people. You're not always going to have the same professor because you might have a graduate student. And so, when you have someone 2 or 3 times during your college career, the relationship you can build with them as a professor leads to research opportunity, leads to mentoring, leads to internship. So really trying to help paint that picture, because families don't know what they don't know. I went to a college where I had a 300 person math class and I had no idea that was going to happen. And I mean, shame on me, but they were like, our average class size is 17 people. So, and I didn't see a 300 person lecture hall on the tour. So I remember walking into that thinking, oh my goodness, my high school class maybe had 30 people in a class. I've never been this big. So just trying to help families understand how to find what's right for them. There's lots of people who do great in big lecture halls. Like, I'm not saying that's not an option for people. It is. But if that's not how you learn best, then you need to find the place where you're going to have those relationships and people looking out for you and caring that maybe you missed class and what's going on in your life to help you navigate so that ultimately you are retained and graduate. Because it's such a disservice to bring students in and then they don't get their degree. And I mean, we've completely failed at our mission if that's what's happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of executing on this, bringing this old messaging back in with the new, like, what does the execution of that look like? Like, what, maybe it's your creative or the actual tagline you're using. How has that changed?
So we don't officially have a tagline right now, but for me, it's definitely photography. Like, we want to have pictures of students interacting with faculty in class, like that, really demonstrating that relationship is going to be important. So we're doing some upcoming photo shoots, and that's going to be a lot of direction that I want to see come out of that. I think copy that tells that story, whether it's social media posts or we recently were on an episode of the college tour, the Amazon series, and the stories the students told really pulled in those key faculty members and those key people who made a difference, the offices that they go to that are relational and build that success for them. So trying to make sure we're highlighting those things in, whether it's a social media post, a postcard to a prospective student, but trying to connect and help them visualize the relationships they're going to have here.
That's great. I have a question around the college tour on Amazon. Like, how is, like, does Amazon provide you with metrics with like how much it's been seen, or like how does this all like funnel?
How does it all work?
Yeah.
So it does air on Amazon, but it's actually a separate company called the College Tour. And initially you launch on their website and put it on yours. So primarily you're trying to drive people to your website. And when you market it, you're really marketing your episode on your website. And then for us, it was about 6 months later that it actually, this month will appear on Amazon, but our episode initially released on our website and the College Tour in July. Oh, no, in October. Sorry, in October. I will tell a college, if you have the opportunity to work with the College Tour people, I would do it. They were the most phenomenal partner. Like, it's so easy to do. They provide you everything you need to do. You just have to find the students. And they were just a great team. And we've been able to use that whole episode and segments of that episode so many different ways. But I think that was a great investment for us and just phenomenal partner.
Got it. I can't wait to watch it. So hopefully by the time this episode is posted, it'll be live. So that's really interesting. And
I've watched other episodes with my kids I have 2 boys that are in high school, one in college, one in high school. But I mean, a school would come up and my son would say, I want to go see X. And I'd be like, it's kind of far for a visit. Like, let's see. And we'd watch the College Tour. And if he seemed still interested, then we would possibly go take a trip there. But it was a great way to see some stories. And they really focus on students. So it really aligned with our brand nicely because we're trying to tell these personal stories. And that's the whole purpose of the show.
Gotcha. And so I've never watched an episode. I don't really know too much about it, but it's really targeted at like an audience like in high school or prospective students. Is that right?
It is, yeah. So the founder, Alex, his niece couldn't visit all the colleges she wanted. So he was like, wouldn't it be great if colleges had like an episode? And he had a reality TV background. And so it profiles 10 different students and their stories at the college. And I mean, it's a commercial, but it was an authentic commercial because we got to showcase these students. And when they wrote their script and write their story, it was all about people, and so it really aligned nicely with what we were hearing in our focus groups, what we were seeing, authentically happen on our campus. So I was just really pleased with how it turned out.
That's really cool that Amazon also picked it up too. I feel like that's just gives it so much more reach. That's impressive. It'd be cool if they. I wonder if they're gonna share numbers with you. I'm curious to hear that.
I'm sure that there are all of those available. Sometimes I think we do things and then don't take the time to measure them as effectively. I mean, that's probably my biggest weakness as a marketer, like going back and really evaluating what works.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm at fault for that too. It's we live in a world now today where there's data on everything, and so being able to pick out the things that you want to know the data on is half the battle, right? And then like creating some sort of consistency or cadence around like how often you're supposed to look at it or and such. So
I worked for a boss many moons ago, Bill Stanchikevich. I'll give him a call out on this. And we had a quarterly meeting called Measurable Outcomes, where we would go through all the programs and the data related to programs. He was the most data-driven boss I've ever had. But we left every measurable outcome meeting with a stop doing list. And we would stop doing things that weren't working for us and reinvest those resources. And so, I just have a lot of respect. Like, that's hard to do as a leader, to say to people, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. It's not working. But we had proof because every quarter we had very specific data we were looking at and measuring against previous quarters and could say, yeah, not worth the investment anymore.
That's super smart. Shout out to Bill. I like a do not or a no list. I would call that a no list. Creating a no list is half the battle of creating the yes list. So
because none of us are getting more money, right? So we have to figure out how to use what we've got.
Yeah. I know you mentioned in our previous call about like, using the money that you got, like you work with vendors a lot, right? Do you have any tips around, how you found a good relationship? Obviously, like, working with a good company is probably step one, but like, are there tricks to the trade from your seat of the house, right? In terms of like managing time or relationships, creating some kind of workflow that you've come to?
I think first you have to know what you want from a vendor. And I think I've made that mistake many years. Like you don't really know what you're looking for. So you end up in a relationship and then you're not necessarily happy because you're not getting what you want. So you have to do a little stealth research ahead of time, talk to some peers at other schools, start to figure out kind of what's out there and who's going to be the right person for you. I actually, when we were looking for an enrollment partner, put up a big sheet of like butcher paper on my wall with like post-it note categories because everybody kind of offered something different. And then I had like check marks of like who had what so that we could kind of say, okay, for this price and this price, this is exactly what we're getting. And then we were able to kind of pick the vendor that worked best for us. I try to be super transparent with my vendors. Like, this is my pain point. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. When they're not, if we're not getting what we need, say it sooner than later so that they can pivot and shift. If the right rep is not assigned to us, maybe we need someone with a little more experience or someone who's worked at smaller schools more. But I really rely on my higher ed colleague network. I think it's important to go to conferences and to be involved in your state organizations, because then you can pick up the phone and say like, hey, I hear you're working with XYZ, because it is probably a 3-letter acronym. And, how's it going? And so those referrals are so critical. I do think vendors, I just get inundated with vendor solicitations though, as a AVP. Like if I put a question on LinkedIn about something, I'm going to get like 40 vendor messages. And that's really hard to like get through all that clutter. And so I think, I do encourage vendors to, to find conferences and things too, to connect with us more naturally and authentically, because it's just so hard. And it often sometimes feels like you're being stalked when, and I know they have a job to do, but there's just so many vendors, in so little time. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. I get bombarded with my LinkedIn like every day, right? And so it's just trying to shuffle through and say no to most of them is part of my day now. I get it. Yeah.
yeah, but I wouldn't be able to get my job done without so many of our vendors, from our enrollment partners to our digital marketing partners to you guys as our, you help with our campus map. There's just so much like that we have to outsource because we don't have the team bandwidth to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's funny. I like this, like how to work with vendors, like understand what you want to do and the pain point you have. Because I just had a case study call and this person was hired on new. So like they didn't know any of these things, but it was very apparent. Like it was, they hadn't written this down somewhere, right? Like this is why we're working with them. And so the call kind of went, like I need to check back in with them because there wasn't a clear understanding of like, what pain point that was trying to be solved, or, what looks good, what looks bad. None of this was addressed. They were written down anywhere. So I think this practice is really good that you've adopted.
I think it's important to bring your team members into the vendor conversations too, because your webmaster is going to know things that you don't know. Your creative director, I mean, depending on who's on your team, but I've learned so much just from the questions they've asked because of their roles, and I think we get so much further with the vendor when right from the beginning we can have all the right people in the room. And I think the projects that have started off not as successfully, we didn't ask the right questions from day one. And so then we kind of got a product that did some of what we needed, but wasn't exactly what we expected, where you get to like a contract and a scope of work and you're like, oh, that's weird. That's not really what we talked about. So, trying to have just everyone on the same plate together and the right people who are going to help move the project forward.
That's great. And also if they pitch you like a new feature or software, you can be like, hey, like, this is unrelated to the original problem we were trying to solve. Like it can, because it's maybe your colleagues or people on your team can get shiny object syndrome. And I often have it, right? Like I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And then I look back, like, is this really going to help drive our bottom line? Or is this just like a fancy, cool thing for me? And so having that all written down somewhere, I think helps provide clear and focused direction.
I also think it's great to include your team because it helps their growth. We all should be replaceable. If I left tomorrow, this place should be able to run. And if you don't have people plugged in, and I mean, not everyone needs to be in every lane, but having people understand kind of the bigger picture and what's happening is important. And I do, I hate when like I invest in someone and then they're able to leave and go take that to another school or a competitor. But I do really want the team to develop and grow and learn all that's out there. And I've learned so much from vendors. They often have technology and things that we just don't have in house. So, um, it can be such a great opportunity if you have the right vendor.
That's great. Yep. And it reduces risk too, which we know that in higher ed, although it's not as bad as it was 2 years ago, right? Like employee churn is a big risk factor. And if one person knows everything,
Yes,
and they dip out, it's a fire hose for a while. So
it is. And the Great Resignation was real in higher ed, as just like it was everywhere else for a while.
Yeah. I just spoke with someone who went from a 4-person marketing team to just himself until he could hire 4 people, and I was like, oh wow, that is incredible. So yeah, it's real. Well, we're just at about time today, and I'm wondering, Kate, where can our listeners reach out to you to understand more of what you're doing, the good work that you're doing?
Well, they're welcome to contact me at the University of Indianapolis. My email is my last name, Coffman, and then K as in Kate, D as in Diamond @und.edu, or find me on LinkedIn. Hopefully you're not trying to sell me something, but happy to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining, and thanks to our audience for listening in today. Please check us on the next episode.
Thanks so much, Shira. This was fun.
It was so fun. All right. Thanks, everyone.